false memories. False memories are crazy because they can be really hard to differentiate from reality. You can remember an event down to the smells and the dialogue and be completely wrong. Every time you remember something, your brain changes it a little, fills in missing parts, adjusts details, and adds whatever new stuff it automatically felt like adding along the way. The human mind most of the time does not fabricate stuff that didn't happen on its own, unless of course you're in a conversation with a girl and for some weird reason your brain remembers something that the two of you did the previous night. And you try to remind her you're open to it happening again, only for her to insult you, give you a dirty slap, and call the cops on you for just innocently narrating what you thought actually happened. And the scary part is how confidently you defend these memories. Suggestions from other people, photos, social media posts, and even your own assumptions can all be folded into the original memory until the thing you recall is a hybrid of fact and later additions. Emotional intensity and repetition give false memories weight, so they end up feeling more real than some actual events you experienced once and never revisited. Deja vu. Deja vu is that weird, brief flash where the present moment feels like a replay, like you've already lived it before. It sneaks up, gives you a double take, and then vanishes faster than my Netflix free trial. Scientists think it's a timing mismatch inside the brain. The part responsible for seeing familiar things fires a little early compared to the part that checks details, which probably fell asleep, and your mind reads that lag as having seen it before. If it happens very rarely, then it isn't something to worry about, but if it is accompanied by other symptoms, then I'm afraid you might need immediate attention from a psychiatrist. But most of the time, it's just your brain saying, there's a reason for you to think it happened, but I'm not going to tell you why because I'm smarter than you, and I said so. And then it goes on to convince you something that never happened actually did. Memory decay. Memories decay when they aren't revisited. It's a glitch, but it's kinda normal. Your brain prunes details it doesn't deem useful. Sleep, repetition, and emotional importance slow that decay, while neglect accelerates it. That is why you might one day find yourself in a heated argument online with some random dude, and during the argument you mistakenly said something you thought was a fact, but in actuality, it wasn't. And instead of the person you were arguing with politely telling you to double-check your facts, he instead tells you you've got brain rot, sends you a weird pic, then calls you some unspeakable names. It's kinda like my brain while preparing for exams. I learn something, feel smart for a few hours, then it stays in there for some time, and right as I'm about to start writing my exams, it starts melting, like ice cream exposed to heat. One minute I'm quoting facts like a documentary narrator, the next minute I'm staring at a fork wondering if it's always looked like that and why its name sounds so weird. If you go back and review stuff a few times with breaks in between, your brain holds onto it way better. The forgetting curve is why repetition techniques and spaced learning are so effective. They fight the brain's tendency to be a deadweight fat freeloader. Confabulation. Alright, so confabulation is the brain's little storytelling habit. Your memory has a hole, and instead of saying I don't know, it makes up a story to fill the blank. Not lying on purpose, just the mind trying to keep the narrative smooth. You could swear someone you met at a party last week was Bob, just because he looked like a Bob, while in actuality his name is just simple old Bartholomew. You believe it because your brain stitched together bits, the hair, the outfit, the shoes, and just decided he should be a Bob. The weird part is, you can sound confident, like you remember every detail, but it's a patchwork memory, not the real fabric. The brain wants a tidy narrative and will invent missing details to avoid the awkwardness of saying, I don't know. That made-up patch becomes real-feeling memory, because the brain rehearses and stores the stitched story like an original. Childhood amnesia. Childhood amnesia is that big blank many adults have for the first few years of life. It's not that nothing happened back when you were a child, because we all know we did a lot of crazy stuff back when we were kids, but it's just that young brains store and organize experiences differently. As a toddler, you're still developing language, a sense of self, and the brain circuits that help form lasting autobiographical memory. Without those tools, early experiences are often encoded in fragments, a smell, a tone of voice, a body sensation, but not the full story. Later on, those fragments can get sewn into a narrative from stories parents told or photos you saw, and the new version starts to feel like your memory. People sometimes declare a vivid childhood moment with certainty, only to discover it's actually a memory built from a family tale repeated so often it became personal. Emotions and repeated retellings can make pieces stick, but whole scenes from infancy usually remain out of reach because the brain simply wasn't ready to save them in the same way it does after age 3 or 4. Tip of the tongue. Tip of the tongue moments are crazy. The word or name is right there, you can feel it, but your brain decided to go on a vacation just when you needed it the most. Retrieval is the trickiest part of memory work. The information is stored somewhere, but the path to it is temporarily blocked. You might remember letters, syllables, or a similar word, and those partial cues make the whole thing feel frustratingly close. Tip of the tongue episodes show memory's two-step nature: storage and retrieval. You can have perfectly good storage and still stumble at the door when trying to fetch it. Often, walking away or switching tasks helps the word surface later uninvited, almost like your brain was playing hide-and-seek with you even though you weren't in the mood. Stress, fatigue, and age can make these moments more frequent. That's why anytime I experience this, I always keep in mind that I'm either stressed out from work, drained out, or maybe I just have the brain of a 65-year-old. Source amnesia. Now this one's different from the amnesia we discussed earlier. Source amnesia is when you hold on to a fact but lose the trail of how you learned it. You might swear something's true because you think it came from a reliable book you once read, only because you were preparing for your exam, when really it originated from a meme you saw on Reddit when you were stuffing your face and had zero intention of learning anything. That mismatch changes how much trust you place in your memory. You start to question yourself, and even ask how often you've been doing this. Well, it turns out it doesn't happen a lot. It only happens a few times when our brains decide to play NBA MyGM mode, where it substitutes an unreliable source with a credible one. If you remember the content but not the source, you can't reliably judge its credibility. This error helps explain how myths and rumors spread. When people strip away the origin, stories float free and attach to new authority. Over time, a claim made by some random drunk dude at a bar can graduate into a supposedly documented event. Source amnesia makes memory social and slippery facts survive, but context often doesn't. Repressed memories. Repressed memories are the ones the mind shoves out of conscious reach to keep you functional when something is traumatic. They're a hot mess because on one hand, the brain might be shielding you from something real, and on the other, it might be building a memory out of stuff people said or hinted at later, like it doesn't have a mind of its own. Sometimes a memory seems to resurface later in therapy or under stress, vivid and raw, but it's tricky to know whether that memory was excavated or assembled during the recovery process. When people report recovered memories, they're often loaded with emotion and conviction, which makes them feel unquestionably true. But the process of digging into the past can unintentionally seed new ideas, questions, leading prompts, stories from others that the mind then turns into memories. Whether a memory is recovered or reconstructed, it's real in the sense that it affects how someone feels, but it doesn't always equal an objective record of what actually happened. Misinformation Effect. The misinformation effect is when new information sneaks into an old memory and changes it. After an event, hearing someone else's take, reading reports, or answering leading questions can add foreign details that your brain blends into the original recollection. Over time, the updated memory feels original because the brain doesn't keep neat layers. It updates the stored file with each new input. This is a major reason eyewitness accounts can be unreliable. Each eyewitness comes up with their own entirely different account of something they all encountered at the same place and at the same time. This is because eyewitnesses compare notes, read articles, or hear suggestive questions, and their brains become like chameleons. They converge and adopt inaccuracies from each other. The misinformation effect shows memory's adaptive nature. We don't keep raw recordings, we keep living narratives that are constantly edited by later experiences. Flashbulb memories. Flashbulb memories feel like photographs taken by a camera in your mind during high-emotion events. People can recall where they were, what they felt, the tone of voice around them, and they hold those snapshots with fierce confidence. The twist is that even these vivid memories can change. Emotion heightens the sense that the memory is exact, but it doesn't guarantee accuracy. Details shift, subtle bits get swapped in, and over time the memory can drift while the person's certainty remains high. Flashbulb memories are like those dramatic selfies you take during a meltdown. Intense lighting, wild emotion, and you swear it captured everything perfectly. But look closer later and half the frame's blurry, your shirt's inside out, and the background's not even as cool as you thought it was. You still post it with full confidence, even though the details are clearly doing their own thing. That's how your brain handles emotional memories, high drama, low accuracy, and zero interest in fact-checking. Big public moments and personal milestones often become flashbulb memories. They carry weight and meaning regardless of factual precision, and that emotional charge makes them central to identity. But trusting a flashbulb memory as a literal record can be misleading because feelings do not equal flawless recall. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like, subscribe, and join our communities in the comments section for more interesting content.